About Reform UK, let's quickly dwell on our dreadful Prime Minister.
You're just spoilers. You're going to split the right-wing vote. You're going to take the Tories out, but you won't get a single seat. And of course, Reform UK got 5 seats in that election. We got 14% of the vote. And I mean, there were 2 things I think that happened at the last election. The first is there was a voter despondency. Voter turnout from 2019 went down from 67.5% to about 59.5%. And a lot of those people who weren't voting had voted for Boris Johnson.
Musk's opinion has dynamited British politics more than once, in that he's able to engage in front of millions of people.
Remember when royal intervention in politics was limited to subtle hints and carefully worded Christmas speeches? Those days are officially over. King Charles has shattered royal protocol by directly confronting Starmer over Ukraine policy, warning of catastrophic economic consequences that could devastate British families. As the conflict intensifies, public opinion has shifted dramatically, with polls showing the monarchy enjoying unprecedented support, while Starmer's popularity collapses to historic lows. The constitutional implications are enormous. We're witnessing what could be the most significant realignment of power between Crown and government since the Victorian era. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. What if I told you the British monarchy was staging its most dramatic political intervention since the 1930s abdication crisis? The carefully maintained facade of ceremonial neutrality that's defined the modern monarchy has been dramatically shattered as King Charles directly challenges Prime Minister Starmer over Britain's Ukraine policy. This isn't some minor disagreement over protocol or ceremony. It represents a seismic shift in the unwritten rules that have governed British politics for generations.
Sir Keir Starmer, Your Majesty.
Your Majesty. You must be utterly exhausted. Not much. Quite a grueling. It's a very sort of quick changeover, isn't it? To say the least. And having to get to grips with everything straight away.
The other one was, but this one is definitely fiction. And he's sold the rights to the Universal TV, and I'm told it's going to be similar to The Crown.
Well, this must be a very jolly day for you. A very jolly day indeed.
Well, it's a remarkable insurgency that Reform UK has managed. When I joined the party in March 2023, the party was polling at 6%. And when Rishi Sunak called the election on the 22nd of May, we were polling at 16%.
For centuries, the monarchy has operated under an unspoken agreement, retains symbolic power by relinquishing actual political influence. The sovereign may be consulted, may encourage, and may warn, but never publicly oppose government policy. King Charles has now broken this most sacred arrangement in what royal observers describe as an unprecedented constitutional moment. The catalyst for this royal rebellion isn't some abstract debate over principles, but rather Starmer's unwavering Ukraine stance that initially appeared principled and morally sound. However, as Treasury officials have now assessed, this position threatens to place Britain on a collision course with Trump's America and potential economic catastrophe.
And I believe in that statement he has made, God Almighty, he's made a lot of mistakes, but I think that statement was the mistake of his political life. To slur anyone in this country who thinks that justice for those victims should be obtained through a public inquiry, to say they're far right. We've been talking about Reform UK. Let's quickly dwell on our dreadful Prime Minister. What do you make of his, in my view, outrageous assertion that if you, me, anybody in Britain feels that there should be a new inquiry into the grooming gang scandal?
The stakes couldn't be higher, with internal Treasury reports revealing Britain could hemorrhage up to £32 billion annually in exports if the US follows through with its threatened tariffs. This isn't merely about abstract economic figures. These sanctions would devastate real communities and families across Britain. According to government assessments, over 400,000 jobs spanning manufacturing and financial services hang precariously in the balance as direct casualties of what critics increasingly view as Starmer's stubborn refusal to recalibrate Britain's position. The King, normally restricted to ceremonial duties and carefully worded statements on non-controversial matters, has taken an unusually active role in urging reconsideration of this potentially ruinous policy path. The potential economic fallout from US tariffs represents an existential threat to British industry and livelihoods, sources close to the palace report, the King saying during private discussions. This marks a dramatic transformation in public perception, from Charles as ceremonial figurehead to the voice of practical economic reason in the eyes of many ordinary Britons who fear for their economic security. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine weekly audience between monarch and Prime Minister at Buckingham Palace.
And you're just spoilers. You're going to split the right-wing vote. You're going to take the Tories out, but you won't get a single seat. And of course, Reform UK got 5 seats in that election. We got 14% of the vote. And
do you think, out of interest, though, that you did split the right vote and that you have helped Labour to maybe a bigger majority than they would have anticipated?
What typically serves as a discreet information exchange and ceremonial courtesy erupted into something far more confrontational. Royal correspondents report that the meeting ended abruptly, a clear signal of complete breakdown in relations between palace and parliament. Such a public fracturing of this relationship hasn't been witnessed in modern British political history. Palace insiders describe a king genuinely concerned about Britain's economic future, while Downing Street sources characterize the monarch as overstepping constitutional boundaries in a dangerous precedent. The standoff has spread beyond just the two principals, with whispers growing increasingly loud in Westminster that Chancellor Rachel Reeves may be forced to resign if Starmer refuses to moderate his approach. As the economic architect of Labour's government, Reeves reportedly faces an impossible position, implementing a fiscal policy while knowing the underlying economic assumptions are being undermined by diplomatic choices. Political analysts note the rare nature of this crisis, marked by a direct challenge from King Charles to a sitting Prime Minister over foreign policy, a situation that could lead to serious constitutional consequences if neither side backs down. The impact on public opinion has been swift and brutal. Polling data shows Starmer's approval ratings plummeting to historic lows of just 30%, while nearly half of voters now openly disapprove of his leadership, a devastating reversal for a prime minister who entered office with substantial goodwill just months ago. Labour MPs in manufacturing constituencies are particularly alarmed, with many privately expressing fear that their seats, only recently won from Conservative hands, could be lost again if economic damage materialises. The opposition has wasted no time capitalising on the crisis, with Reform UK's Nigel Farage cunningly positioning himself as defender of both British sovereignty and economic pragmatism, an unusual alliance with monarchical concerns that's proving surprisingly effective with voters. For Starmer, this represents the most serious challenge of his brief premiership. Caught between international commitments, domestic economic interests, and now an activist monarch with significant public support, political historians struggle to find comparable precedents, with some reaching back to the abdication crisis or even further to Victorian constitutional tensions for suitable analogies. What we're witnessing isn't merely a spat between monarchy and government. It's a seismic realignment of Britain's power structures that could reshape the nation for decades. The polling tells us nearly a third of Brits believe Starmer won't last the year, with whispers of an early election growing louder as his government teeters on the brink of chaos. Perhaps most telling is how Nigel Farage has masterfully positioned Reform UK alongside the monarchy's economic concerns. His party's surge in the polls reveals a public increasingly sympathetic to Charles while viewing Starmer's government as economically reckless. The brewing sentiment favours prioritising Britain's financial stability over distant military entanglements. Labour's historic victory just months ago now seems like ancient history. The coming weeks will determine whether Starmer can somehow salvage his premiership from this royal rebuke, or if we're watching the spectacular beginning of Labour's implosion before they've even properly unpacked at Downing Street.